Taking your business or your leadership to the next level requires new knowledge, experience, and perspective. If you've never been there, how do you know what you need? And so, someone else, usually a peer or other people around you in the business world, can help you figure out how to do that by sharing their knowledge, experience, and perspective. It's what we've been talking about all week: peer support. And we're going to talk a little bit about maybe what you're missing. Are you missing the impact of it? As we share a little bit of what we discovered this week, on today's antidote. Man, that shouldn't be hard to say. I've been saying it 805 times. All that and more on this episode of today's Antidote, episode 805.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
I got to be honest, Tom.
Yes,
it was nice. It was nice for you to have a slight little hiccup in the opening, because I feel like I do that frequently and you never do that. It just makes me feel like, you're human now. You were a demigod to me. Now you're sort of just a god.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I just didn't, when I got tongue-tied on Antidote, which I was like, how can I be tongue-tied on something I've been saying for however? Threw me just for half a second. So, well, I'm glad that I made your day, that you could feel better about my misstep. So
you did. And we're changing things up today. It's been something else every week. So it's kind of weird for both of us.
I don't know.
Or it's different.
That's the way I look at it, is that we just get on here and talk, and there's some topic, and whatever the topic is.
There you have it. Okay. All right. Well, start the formal part, and then we'll get to the chit chat.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Good morning and welcome to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast, where each week we have a conversation around a topic, as I mentioned at the beginning, sort of. I got to it, I think, is we're talking this week all about peer support. And today we're going to sort of do a little bit of review and just make sure that you're not missing the impact that peer support can have, because you might have missed an episode this week, or maybe you missed all of the episodes this week. You can always go back and find them and watch them, whether on Facebook or YouTube. And we know that as we have this conversation, you have the opportunity to be impacted, just like you can be impacted by peer support. So as we go through and share some of our thoughts and ideas around peer support and what you might be missing, please feel free to share your thoughts and ideas, because we know it'll add value to the show. And as we go through this, we'll just share some of our discoveries so that hopefully you can figure out how to take your next step along your own unique pathway to success, especially as you're trying to figure out, I'm not really sure what to do next, because I haven't ever really done it. And maybe there's somebody out there who has had some version of it. Maybe I can find some support among my peers to help me feel less uncomfortable, feel more confident, and be better prepared to take the next step. Before we dive into that conversation, though, each morning, Bob and I start off by sharing our celebrations. Bob, what are you celebrating today?
So I told you I moved into
the fact that I misstepped at the beginning. I know.
No, that's not it. I moved into my penthouse location last week, and you have to buzz someone up. There's an intercom, and you press the button, and then yes. Well, a niece of mine was over yesterday, and she came and I buzzed her up, and then we came back to my place after having dinner, and she's going to stay at my place while I'm away for a trip. And she said, "Uncle Bob, can I go upstairs and you buzz it and I'll let you in?" No lie. That's what I've wanted to do the whole time. So she went upstairs and I buzzed it and she let me in. It's like, that is so fun. So it's the little things that make a big difference.
Well, maybe that's not such a little thing. It's just a thing that for her.
Yeah.
Her had more impact.
And for me, because I had the same feeling when I saw it the first time. It was like, ooh, this looks like fun.
So how did you feel when you were the person actually being buzzed in? Do you feel like
Kinda
you're in New
cool
York
too.
City or some other city where
That's
you
what,
get buzzed
and
in all the time?
she had no knowledge of it. She'd never seen it anywhere. So she didn't know that. And I said to her, you could be at a 80 floor apartment in New York City. You don't want to go down 80 floors to open the door for someone. So you buzz them in. And she's like, well, that makes sense, but you're on the 3rd floor. You could come down and get me. And I said, well, I could, but alas,
Yes,
this is available.
although likely you would lock yourself out. That's what I could see you doing.
That is one of my fears.
Oh, I didn't grab my keys. Oh, the door shut behind me. Now there's nobody to buzz me in and I don't have my keys. I could see that.
You've probably willed this into existence just by saying it out loud.
So never do
I
that.
have given.
I will
I'm
never
in the
go down.
process of giving a couple of people keys for just that reason.
That's probably a good idea. Makes a lot of sense.
Yes. So what are you celebrating today?
What am I celebrating today?
Oh, come on. Real?
I know. I just have to think about all the things that I could
All
celebrate.
right,
Here's what I'm going to
people,
celebrate.
here we go. Ding, 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 da, 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 do, do, do. It's not like we haven't done
like I
this.
said before, I just have to pick one. I like to celebrate, so I think about it a lot. So I'm going to celebrate. I had a conversation yesterday.
I'm going to pause you there, Tom, for a minute. You don't like to celebrate because every time you do something, I say, how are you going to celebrate? You're like, well, I don't really know. I'm not sure. Oh, I haven't really thought about that. So you don't like to celebrate. You've been on me all next week because we recorded next week. It's my chance to get back at you.
Fair enough. Okay.
And folks, if you want to really have a good ride, come along next week because almost every day my world gets rocked.
I think that's my job. I don't know.
Next week you were in full force for next week. So now I've padded. What are you going to celebrate today? Because you have so many things to celebrate and you've thought about it so much. You have this list of them.
So yesterday I had a chance to spend some time with a client which is always interesting to me, is that many times the clients that we work with, at least I work with, they sort of have done a lot of what we've talked about. They just forget. It's amazing the number of times I will share a thought or idea with someone and they'll be like, yeah, I knew that. I knew how to do that. Why am I not doing it? Kind of like celebrating for me. Right, I'll admit that. And so we just had a great conversation around really how to strategize around major gifts. The person works for a nonprofit organization and they hadn't really had a plan to how to manage their major gift program, and because they didn't really have a program, and they knew that they needed to increase individual giving. They know that grants is one way to go, and it can also be fraught with the changing winds of the granting organization of what their priorities are.
The changing winds. Look at you getting all poetic. Folks, we have Edgar Allan Poe in the house today.
Well, try to, share some of my hidden talents that people don't know about occasionally.
Are you a poet?
Anyhow, am I a poet?
Yes.
I don't know. I've thought about it, and I was trying to come up with a poem and I couldn't do it. Sorry. Anyhow, the client, I think I helped the client find some clarity. And it was interesting is that it could have been considered peer support. I mean, here are two people who've been in the nonprofit space. Yes, I am coaching this person. And though it was a conversation, they shared a little bit about what they're at, and I was able to help clarify, I think, some things for them. And again, while I was a coach, which we'll talk about that type of support later, and again, we were both people who've been in the nonprofit space. And at the same time, one of the really great things about that was someone who works at that organization is someone I had coached before. And they happened to walk by, and it was really nice to see them and just have a brief conversation. And it was interesting because I'll share this, is I am I'm not necessarily a hug initiator,
Okay.
yet I'm welcome to receive hugs, if that makes sense.
Okay. That makes
I
sense.
always find it a little awkward as a guy, so I sort of hold back. And both of the people I was with yesterday are huggers, and so I felt like, and I even shared that with them. It's like, sort of feel awkward here because I'm not really a hug initiator, although I welcome all hugs. So that's my celebration.
Nice. Nice. I think there were 3 celebrations embedded in that one, if I'm keeping score at home.
Didn't I say I have a lot of things to celebrate? It's just figuring
You do.
out.
We all do. We all do if we look for them, right? And that's, I think, what we try to bring out here. And I think, honestly, kidding aside, the problem you're having that you have so many things to celebrate is what I see happening for me and for some of our clients when we embed this in their day. It's like I can't decide which of the things to celebrate, which go back 2-3 years, I don't think I would have felt that way about things.
Yeah, I would agree.
So if you're someone who hasn't started to think about how you can celebrate the steps you take in the day, try it today. Take a moment at the end of the day or at the beginning of the next day and say, what can I celebrate from yesterday or from earlier today? You'll be surprised what you find. And you'll be surprised how little things become very important when you think about what you're celebrating.
I would agree. All right. Shall we move on to our conversation around?
Absolutely. You kind of teed up peer support really well. And we've been talking all week about it. And I think the biggest thing I take away from it is that we talk about it not being anywhere. We talked about it yesterday, I believe, or the day before. I'm not sure which day. They're all running together.
It was yesterday.
And it turns out it's everywhere. And I think the other thing for me with regards to peer support is it's everywhere, and it's also available to us to offer everywhere. And we didn't talk a lot about giving peer support. We talked a lot about receiving it. And one of the things I felt as I was thinking about the week last night, it's like really need to take a couple of minutes and talk about the value of peer support, giving it, because I think when I support people as a peer, it helps me clarify my own thoughts. It helps me see things with a different set of eyes, that things that we learn how to do certain things. Like you and I do these podcasts. It's very easy, I think, for both of us now. If someone came in and said, hey, I'd really like to learn how you do this, we would have to break it down. We'd have to really think about the steps. And I know when I was teaching college, one of the hardest things was to teach grammar. You learn grammar as a kid, and then when you're an adult and you're teaching grammar, you have to figure out the comma rules, and it's such precision. To know them, it's one thing to know them, it's another to apply them. It's a third to be able to teach someone else how to do it. And I think that's part of the value of peer support, being able to help someone else see something that you see so easily, gives you a chance to really see how far you've come from, oh, I started at this job, or I started my business almost 13 years ago. I was talking to someone yesterday who's starting a business, and they were going through the same things I went through 13 years ago. And as I was talking to them, I realized how far I had come in those 13 years that I didn't really think about it. It's like, oh, I've learned how to do that. Oh, I know how to, and if you had said to me yesterday morning, give me a list of things you've learned over the last 13 years, I wouldn't have included the 3 things I shared with this person. But when they asked me about those 3 specific things, it brought me to, oh, right. Yes. I remember those days. So I think it's a chance. In a way, it's almost another way to celebrate how far we've come. We seem to spend so much of our life thinking about where we want to go, and we don't spend enough time talking with ourselves about how far we've come, the steps we've taken, the progress we've made. Even if it's progress not in directions we want, it's still progress. And so I think peer support, that opportunity as the supporter, can be very valuable if we look at it that way.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's interesting. I've had the opportunity in the last 2 days, as many people know on the show, is that I officiate girls and women's lacrosse. And, many times your partners are peers. Occasionally you might work with your mentor,
You're officiating partners, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And in each of the last 2 days, I probably had a little more experience than the people that I worked with. Actually, I'm pretty sure I did, even though we may have been at the same level or on the same game. So we are peers in that regard. And, one of the things I felt about providing some support was I always make sure to say, this is what works for me. We were talking a little bit with both in the last 2 games I've had about positioning as an official. Where do you stand on the field so that you can get different angles and see things differently? And each time I shared, here's a thought, because I think based on what I'm seeing, you may not be able to see all that you would really like to see based on where you're at. And to really cover the field the way we as a team need to cover the field, it might be a little more beneficial so that the other team members can do their job the way that they are supposed to, the correct way to do it. And, so I shared that with them, kind of some adjustments to consider. And then I said, because it was kind of mid-game, I said, and here's the thing. If you find yourself there and you're uncomfortable, or you're feeling like you're not able to do something else that you felt really comfortable with, go back to what you were doing before. Like, don't let something that I shared, even though I think it has value, and you may find it having value, don't let it take you out of where you're at, so that you feel like you're stepping backwards rather than using this as a way to help move forward. And I think that's, one of the things that I took away from this week was the idea that peer support is not the answer. It's a way to help you find an answer. And I think that's so often, sometimes we see a peer and they give us some support and say, have you ever thought about this? And we just, either because of who they are or where they are or what they've done that we haven't done, we feel like that's as I think I talked about yesterday, the day before, best practice. And like everyone should do it, rather than just feedback, for you to consider and see how it impacts what you've already been doing, and if that impact has been beneficial to helping you figure out how you move forward to get to wherever it is you want to be.
Michael's with us this morning, and he says peer support can provide a sense of belonging, empathy, and sharing experience can uplift your support and a sense of helping others. I feel like this week Michael could have done the whole each episode with us. He's been tracking really well. But yeah, I love that idea. I love the idea of belonging. And I think that's a word that didn't come to mind for me, but it really does create a sense of belonging, that within that culture, within that group, the officials that you're working with, it's kind of lonely on that field, I bet, at times. And so you have a sense of belonging that you share with each other, and it makes it probably more fun. It probably makes it easier some days. And it also makes it a better learning experience, because you can at halftime say to each other, hey, how did you figure that out? I was really struggling, or I didn't know that rule as well as you did. And I think that's something that's available to us if we choose to take advantage of it. I think often we don't look at the peer support with the eyes that we could. It's sort of like it's the last thing we consider. And even as an owner of a business, how many times could you go to a networking event and say to someone, hey, I'm struggling with, I have this tax question. Would you know the answer? Is there anyone here that that might be, who's been through this? We don't do that typically. Typically, it's like, hi, I'm Bob, and this is what I do. Here's my card. Versus, this is what I need in the moment to be better at what I do. And if someone came up to me and asked me a question about, hey, you do a podcast, I'd love to learn more about how you did that. That would be a person that I would really want to start bonding with, and it might lead to business.
Sure. Well, I think that is one of the things, is so often when you become a leader or you're the owner of a business, you feel like you're almost peerless. It's very hard, I think, sometimes to think about who your peers might be. For a lot of reasons. You might think about it's competition. You might think about them as, why are they interested in what I'm doing? it can be easy to go down the path of this doesn't have value for me. And I think when we consider that, we miss out on those opportunities. I clearly remember, and I think I talked about this earlier in the week, going to conventions where those around me started to become peers. We would talk about whatever the conversation was of the group we were in. And before you know it, we were sharing thoughts and ideas about what we are doing and where we're trying to go and the challenges that we face within that. And so that value of peer support can be so beneficial, I think, always, if we're willing to consider it and those around us are willing to offer it. It's kind of a two-way street.
I like it. Ed's with us this morning again, and he says compassion with love of what you do for others. I love that phrase. Compassion, being caring, and really reaching people at where they are, which I think ultimately is the key. So, Tom, this has been a great week.
I would agree.
I would actually tell you one of my favorites of all the weeks.
This week is one of your favorites?
This week is. Not next week, not so much. But this week, yes. And folks, I'm telling you, if you want to watch me get my comeuppance, just come to Monday's program next week, or Tuesday, or Wednesday.
You just got a little peer support that was not what you expected.
Something like that. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. If you have something you'd like to share that you think people might be missing, the impact around peer support, please feel free to put it in the comments. Because it might be exactly what someone is looking for. And again, I think when you're around peers, I think Bob and I see this as peer support, is that we are sharing some thoughts and ideas with others. And when people comment, that's really their way to support what we're trying to accomplish. And so we welcome all those thoughts and ideas. And we encourage you to remember that just because you might think everyone knows this, doesn't mean they know it or have heard it in the way you are going to share it. And they may actually truly hear it in the way that you share it with them. So please feel free to put your thoughts and ideas in the comments. And we know that if you're listening to the podcast, unfortunately, there's no place to comment. So please join us inside our Ring of Renegades Facebook group where you can share your thoughts and ideas there. And you might find some peers while you're in there that might add value to what you're trying to accomplish. So we look forward to seeing you inside the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. Otherwise, I love this, Michael. Thank you. Go team, go. Have a great week. I love that. It's a great way to end this week's show. So thanks so much for being with us. Go out and make it a great day.
Hey, and embrace the renegading you. Whatever that looks like, you're going to thank yourself come Monday morning. Maybe even tomorrow, today, and Saturday, come to think of it.
Is it worth it?
Oh, it's so worth it. Absolutely.
Right. Excellent. All right, everyone. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.